She didn't know the boy she treated like a servant was actually her lost son. I found out 3 hours ago that the boy I've been treating like dirt for the past 6 months is my son. My son. The child I've mourned for 17 years. The baby I held once before they told me he died. And I've been making him scrub toilets. I'm standing in my bathroom right now, staring at the marble floor he cleaned yesterday on his hands and knees while I stood over him complaining about streaks. My reflection in the mirror shows a woman I don't recognize anymore, perfectly styled hair, designer clothes, diamonds at my throat. When did I become this person? My name is Catherine Westbrook. 3 hours ago, I had everything figured out. I was wealthy, respected, in control. Now my hands won't stop shaking because I keep seeing his face when I screamed at him yesterday for breaking a glass. The way he flinched. The way he apologized in that quiet voice. The way his eyes, my eyes, looked at the floor. I need to go back. I need to explain how this happened, because I don't understand it myself. How does a mother not recognize her own child? But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start 6 months ago, when a scrawny teenager showed up at my door asking for work. 6 months ago, I was different. Still cold, still demanding, but I had my reasons. My husband James had died 2 years earlier, leaving me with a fortune and a hole in my chest I filled with control. Control over my home, my staff, my life. If everything was perfect, I wouldn't have to feel anything. The boy appeared on a Tuesday morning. I was reviewing household accounts when my housekeeper Maria knocked. "Ma'am, there's a young man at the service entrance. He says he's looking for work." "We are fully staffed," I said without looking up. "He's very thin, ma'am. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days." I sighed. Maria had a bleeding heart. 5 minutes. She brought him to my study. He was 17, maybe 16, with dark hair that needed cutting and clothes that had seen better days. But it was his posture that struck me, straight back despite obvious exhaustion. Proud, even in desperation. "Name?" I asked. "Ethan, ma'am. Ethan Morris." Morris. Not unusual. Thousands of Morrises in the world. Experience? I've worked construction, restaurant kitchens, whatever I could find. I'm a hard worker. I learn fast. His voice was steady, but I saw his hands clasped tight in front of him. Nervous. "Why here?" He hesitated. "I heard you might need help. I can do maintenance, yard work, cleaning, anything." There was something about him. Maybe Maria was right and I saw the hunger in his eyes. Maybe I was feeling charitable that day. Or maybe, and this thought haunts me now, maybe some part of me recognized something I couldn't name. "Trial basis," I said. 2 weeks. Room in the staff quarters, meals, minimum wage. You report to Maria. 1 mistake and you're gone. "Thank you, ma'am. You won't regret it." But I already was regretting it because I'd made a rule after James died: no emotional connections. Staff was staff. And something about this boy made me uneasy in a way I couldn't identify. He was perfect, of course. Too perfect. Within a week, he'd reorganized the garage, fixed the garden fountain I'd been meaning to call someone about, and deep-cleaned the conservatory until it gleamed. He was quiet, efficient, and somehow always appeared exactly when needed. It irritated me. "He's a good boy," Maria said one evening. "Very polite. Never complains." "Everyone complains," I said. "Not Ethan." Yesterday I asked him to clean out the gutters in the rain. He just nodded and did it. That was the first red flag, though I didn't recognize it then. What 17-year-old doesn't complain? What teenager accepts everything without question? One night, I came downstairs for water and found him in the kitchen, staring at a framed photo on the wall, the only picture I kept of James and me with our families. My family. My mother, my father, my brother David. What are you doing? I snapped. He jumped, nearly dropping the dish he was drying. I'm sorry, ma'am. The photo caught my eye. That's private. Of course. I apologize. He set down the dish carefully and moved to leave. Wait. I don't know why I stopped him. Why were you looking at it? He turned back, and in the dim kitchen light, I could have sworn something flickered across his face. Pain. Recognition. But it was gone so fast I thought I'd imagined it. You look happy in it, he said quietly. That's rare. Then he left, and I stood there with my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. That was when I should have known. That was when I should have asked questions. Instead, I started treating him worse. I told myself it was because he was getting too comfortable, too familiar. I started finding fault with everything. His cleaning wasn't thorough enough, he was too slow, too fast, too present, too absent. I had him redo jobs 3-4 times. I criticized him in front of other staff. And he took it all without a word. Why do you let her speak to you like that? I heard Maria ask him once. She has her reasons, he replied. What kind of answer was that? It made me angrier. So I pushed harder. 3 months in, I made him my personal servant. I don't know what possessed me. Maybe it was because he never pushed back. Maybe I wanted to see where his breaking point was. Maybe some twisted part of me needed someone to absorb all the anger I'd been carrying since James died, since before that, since the day they told me my newborn son had died 17 years ago. You attend to my personal needs now, I announced one morning. My rooms, my schedule, my errands. Maria will reassign your other duties. Yes, ma'am, he said. Just like that. No hesitation. I had him organize my closets by color and season. Bring my coffee at exactly 6:47 a.m., not a minute earlier or later. Iron my newspapers so the ink wouldn't smudge. Tasks that were deliberately excessive, deliberately demeaning. He did them all perfectly. You're being cruel, Maria finally said to me one evening. She'd worked for me for 15 years and rarely spoke out of turn. That boy works harder than anyone I've ever seen, and you treat him like he's nothing. He's paid for his work. Money isn't everything, Mrs. Westbrook. Whatever anger you're carrying, he doesn't deserve it. You're dismissed, I said coldly. She left, but her words burrowed under my skin. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went to James's study, poured myself his favorite whiskey, and sat in his chair. The room still smelled like his cologne, cedar and something else I could never identify. I'm becoming someone you wouldn't recognize, I whispered to the empty room. Someone I don't recognize. James and I had wanted children so badly. We'd tried for years before I finally got pregnant at 35. The pregnancy was difficult, I was on bed rest for months. But when they placed that baby in my arms, screaming and red-faced and perfect, I felt complete for the first time in my life. He lived for 6 hours. They said it was a heart defect they'd missed. They said nothing could have been done. They said a lot of things while I lay in that hospital bed with empty arms and milk coming in for a baby who would never drink it. They gave me something to dry up the milk. They couldn't give me anything for the rest of it. James tried to comfort me. "We'll try again," he said. But I couldn't. The pregnancy had damaged something. The doctors said another baby was unlikely, possibly dangerous. So that was it. One child, 6 hours, and a lifetime of wondering what he would have become. We named him Ethan. I'd forgotten that until just now. Sitting in James's study, the memory surfaced like something drowning. We'd chosen the name together, weeks before he was born. Ethan James Westbrook. They'd put it on the death certificate. They'd put it on the tiny grave marker in the cemetery I visited once and never went back to because I couldn't bear it. Ethan. My hand started shaking, whiskey sloshing in the glass. No. It was a common name. It meant nothing. The boy working for me was Ethan Morris, a random teenager who needed work. Not Ethan Westbrook. Not my son who died 17 years ago in a hospital in Boston. I drained the glass and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I was worse than ever. I found him cleaning the windows in the morning room and I just unleashed. Every bit of rage and grief and confusion came pouring out. "These are filthy. Are you blind? Do them again." He looked at the spotless windows, then back at me. "Yes, ma'am." And stopped saying yes ma'am in that tone. "What tone would you prefer?" The question was asked so genuinely, so without sarcasm, that it made me even angrier. "Don't talk back to me." "I'm not," he stopped himself. "I apologize." I stepped closer. "Why are you really here, Ethan?" Something flickered in his eyes. "I needed work. There are thousands of houses in this city. Why mine?" "I told you." "I heard you might." "Who told you? Who sent you here?" His jaw tightened. The first real emotion I'd seen from him. "Nobody sent me. I came on my own." "I don't believe you." We stood there, 2 feet apart, and I realized I was breathing hard. My heart was racing. And he was looking at me with an expression I couldn't read, something between sadness and something else. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. "Nothing you're not willing to give," he said quietly. Then he picked up his cleaning supplies and left the room, and I stood there feeling like I'd just walked off a cliff. That was Thursday. On Friday, everything changed. Friday morning, I received the letter. It came in the mail, addressed to me in handwriting I didn't recognize. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 2 sentences. Asterisk, ask Ethan about his birthday. Ask him about Boston. Asterisk. My hands went numb. Boston. Where my son was born. Where my son died. I sat at my desk for 20 minutes, staring at those words. Someone was playing a game with me. Someone knew something. But what? And why now? I found Ethan in the garden, trimming the hedges. "When's your birthday?" I asked without preamble. He turned, surprised by my sudden appearance. "April 14th. My son was born April 14th. The hedge clippers nearly slipped from his hands as he saw my face. "Ma'am. Are you alright? Where were you born?" Now he looked confused. "Why?" Answer the question. "Boston," he said slowly. "Boston General Hospital." The world tilted. I reached for the garden bench, sat down hard. Mrs. Westbrook. He set down the clippers, took a step toward me. Don't, I said sharply. Don't come near me. He stopped. Who are you? I asked. Really? I told you. Ethan Morris. Morris. What's your mother's name? Something changed in his face. A wall came up. Why are you asking me this? Answer me. Sarah, he said. Her name was Sarah Morris. Was? She died. 2 years ago. Cancer. I couldn't breathe. And your father? Never knew him. Where did you live? Before here? Lots of places. Foster homes, mostly, after Mom died. Some group homes. He was lying. Or not lying, but not telling me everything. I could feel it. Why did you come to my house specifically? I asked again. The truth this time. He looked at me for a long moment. I watched something play out behind his eyes, a decision being made. My mother told me to, he finally said. Before she died. She said if I ever needed help, I should come here. To this address. Why? Why here? She never said. Just that I'd be safe here. Safe from what? I don't know. It was the first time I'd heard him raise his voice. I don't know, okay? She was dying. She was on so much medication. Sometimes she made sense, sometimes she didn't. But this address was written in her Bible, underlined 3 times. So when I had nowhere else to go, I came. I stood up. My legs felt like water. Get out. Mrs. Westbrook. Get out of my sight. Now. He left, and I called my lawyer. Robert, I need you to investigate someone. Ethan Morris, 17 years old, claims to be from Boston. I need everything, birth records, school records, medical history, everything. Catherine, what's this about? Just do it. And Robert. Quietly. I don't want anyone knowing. All right. Give me a few days. I couldn't wait a few days. I went to my bedroom and pulled out the box I'd hidden in the back of my closet 17 years ago. The box with the hospital bracelet, the footprints, the single photo they'd taken of my baby before he died. I'd looked at these things maybe 5 times in 17 years. Each time nearly destroyed me. But I look now. The baby in the photo was red and wrinkled, barely recognizable as human the way all newborns are. But he had a birthmark on his left shoulder, a small, port wine stain shaped like a comma. I'd forgotten about that too, until now. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the photo. Did Ethan have a birthmark? I'd never seen him without a shirt. He was always completely covered, even in summer heat. Why was he always completely covered? I heard a knock. Maria stood in the doorway. The boy is packing, she said quietly. He says you fired him. I didn't fire him. I told him to get out of my sight. Same thing to someone with nowhere to go. She looked at me sadly. What happened, Catherine? You've been strange ever since he arrived. Maria, how much do you know about him? Not much. He doesn't talk about himself. But I know a good soul when I see one. She paused. And I know a broken heart. You both have them. After she left, I made a decision that I knew was wrong even as I did it. I went to the staff quarters while Ethan was at dinner. His room was sparse. A narrow bed, a small dresser, a lamp. The few possessions he owned were packed in a duffel bag on the bed. I went through it quickly, hating myself. Clothes. A few books. A photo of a woman who must have been his mother, thin, tired-looking, but with kind eyes. And a Bible. I opened it with trembling hands. There, in the front cover, written in faded ink, Sarah Morris and baby Ethan. I flipped through the pages. Passages were underlined, notes written in the margins. And there, in the book of Ruth, a piece of paper tucked inside. I unfolded it. It was a birth certificate. Ethan Morris, born April 14th, Boston General Hospital. Mother, Sarah Morris. Father, unknown. But there was something wrong with it. The paper was too new, too crisp. Birth certificates yellowed with age. This looked like it had been printed recently. I took a photo with my phone and kept searching. At the very back of the Bible, tucked into the cover, I found a newspaper clipping. It was old, yellowed, from 17 years ago. The headline read, "Hospital under investigation for records irregularities." Boston General Hospital. My hospital. I heard footsteps in the hall. I shoved everything back, left the room, and barely made it to my own quarters before my knees gave out. Someone had sent me that letter for a reason. Someone wanted me to question Ethan's identity. But who? And why? Over the next 3 days, I became obsessed. I watched Ethan constantly, looking for, what? Proof? Recognition? A birthmark I couldn't see through his clothes. He caught me staring during dinner on Tuesday. "Is something wrong, ma'am?" "Take off your shirt," I blurted out. Everyone at the table froze. Maria, the cook, the gardener, all staring at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. "Excuse me?" Ethan said slowly. "Your shirt. Take it off." "Mrs. Westbrook," Maria started. "Now, Ethan." He stood up slowly, his face unreadable. Then he unbuttoned his shirt and shrugged it off. My heart stopped. There, on his left shoulder, was a comma-shaped birthmark. I must have made a sound because everyone was suddenly standing, talking, but I couldn't hear them. All I could see was that birthmark. The same shape. The same place. The same rusty pot wine color. "Mrs. Westbrook." Maria's hand was on my arm. "Catherine." I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Ethan pulled his shirt back on quickly, his face flushed. "I don't understand what." "Get out," I whispered. "Ma'am. All of you. Get out." I was screaming now, standing up so fast my chair crashed backward. "Get out. Get out." They fled. All except Maria, who stood her ground. "Talk to me," she said firmly. "Whatever this is, talk to me." My son had that birthmark. The words came out broken. My baby. The one who died. He had that exact birthmark in that exact place. Maria's face went white. "Catherine, what are you saying?" "I don't know what I'm saying." I pressed my hands to my face. "I don't know anything anymore." She guided me to a chair. "Start from the beginning." So I told her. About the letter. About Boston. About the birth certificate that looked too new. About the newspaper clipping. About 17 years of grief and the impossible, insane thought that was growing in my mind. "You think Ethan is your son," Maria said slowly when I finished. I think I'm losing my mind. Or someone wants you to think that. She stood up, paced. Who knew about your baby? James, obviously. My family, my parents are dead now, but my brother David might remember. The doctors. The hospital staff. I paused. We didn't tell many people. The grief was too raw. And this Sarah Morris, could she have worked at the hospital? I hadn't thought of that. Robert's investigating. I should have heard back by now. As if summoned, my phone rang. Robert's name flashed on the screen. Tell me, I said without greeting. Catherine, are you sitting down? My heart sank. Just tell me. Ethan Morris exists. Birth certificate is registered in Massachusetts. But I had a colleague dig deeper. Catherine, that certificate was issued 3 years ago. It's a legal document, but it's a replacement for a lost original. The problem is, there's no record of an original ever being filed. What does that mean? It means someone created a legal identity for a child who may not have existed before age 14. It's not common, but it happens. Adoptions, witness protection, immigration issues. But Catherine. He paused. I found Sarah Morris's death certificate. She was a nurse. The room spun. Where? Boston General Hospital. She worked in the maternity ward. I dropped the phone. Maria caught it, spoke to Robert while I sat there with my world crumbling. A nurse. From my hospital. From the maternity ward where my son was born and died. Except he didn't die. The thought crystallized with sudden, terrible clarity. My son didn't die. Someone took him. Someone switched him, or lied, or, I didn't know how, but I knew with every cell in my body that the boy I'd been treating like a servant was my child. Maria, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Get Ethan. Now. She looked uncertain. Catherine, you need to think about. Now. She went. I stood on shaking legs and walked to my study, pulled out the photo of my baby. That tiny, perfect face. Those eyes that had looked at me for 6 precious hours before they told me he was gone. I'd held him while he died. Or I thought I had. But had I? The memories were so fractured, drugged with pain medication and grief. They'd taken him away twice, once for tests, once to make him comfortable. Had they brought back the same baby? How could I have not known? Footsteps in the hallway. Ethan appeared in the doorway, Maria behind him. He looked scared. Good. I was terrified. Sit down, I said. He sat. I placed the photo in front of him. Do you know what this is? He looked at it, and I watched his face carefully. Saw his eyes widen slightly. Saw his throat work as he swallowed. A baby, he said quietly. My baby. Born April 14th, 17 years ago. Died 6 hours later, they told me. At Boston General Hospital, where your mother worked. I leaned forward. Where Sarah Morris worked as a maternity ward nurse. His hands gripped the arms of the chair. I don't. He had a birthmark. Right here. I touched my left shoulder. Same as yours. Lots of people have birthmarks. Don't. I slammed my hand on the desk. Don't lie to me anymore. Who are you? I told you. Who are you really? He stood up abruptly. You want the truth? Fine. Yes, my mother worked at that hospital. Yes, she was there when a baby died, maybe your baby, I don't know. All I know is she came home one night with me, told my father, her husband at the time, that she couldn't have children so they were adopting. He believed her until I was 3, until he found out she'd lied about the adoption papers, that there was no agency, no legal process. He left. Called her crazy. My heart was hammering. Keep going. She raised me alone. Told me I was hers, that she'd save me from a terrible situation. She wouldn't say more. Just that some babies are born to the wrong mothers and she'd fix a mistake. His voice cracked. I didn't understand what that meant until I was 14 and needed a birth certificate for something. That's when I found out nothing about my identity was real. That's when she finally told me the truth. Which was? He looked at me with tears streaming down his face. That she'd stolen me. The words hung in the air between us. She'd worked at Boston General for 10 years, he continued, his voice hollow. She'd wanted children desperately, but she couldn't have them. It broke her. Then one night, she was on duty when a wealthy woman came in, high-risk pregnancy, complicated delivery. The baby was born with health problems. The mother was too sedated to really bond with him, and the father was absent, I guess. The baby needed surgery, had to be transferred between rooms several times. No, I whispered. She said it was so easy. There was another baby in the ward who'd just died, similar age, similar size. She switched their bracelets. She told the doctors the healthy baby had died and took me. By the time anyone could have noticed, it was too late. The mother, you, were told your baby died. The dead baby was cremated quickly, no autopsy because the cause of death was obvious. I couldn't breathe. She told you this? When she was dying. The guilt ate her alive for years. She wanted to confess, but she loved me too much. She was weak and selfish and she knew it. So she gave me this address instead. Said if anything happened to her, I should come here. That maybe my real mother would want me. Want you? I was on my feet, around the desk before I realized I'd moved. Want you? I mourned you for 17 years. I visited an empty grave. I destroyed my marriage grieving a son who was alive. He flinched back. I didn't know. I didn't know if it was even true. She was so sick, on so much medication. Maybe she was delusional. Maybe she'd adopted me legally and just confused the story. I came here to find out, but when I saw you, so angry, so cold, I thought there was no way you could be. I thought she'd been wrong. So you stay anyway. Let me treat you like a servant. I had nowhere else to go. He was shouting now too. And part of me thought, if you were my mother, maybe I deserved it. Maybe I deserved to be punished for what she'd done, for being the reason you suffered. We stood there, 3 feet apart, both breathing hard. Maria, I said without taking my eyes off Ethan. Call Robert. Tell him I need a DNA test. Today. Now. Catherine. Now. She fled. I looked at the boy in front of me, my son, maybe, probably, impossibly, and felt 17 years of rage and grief and love colliding in my chest. If this is true, I said slowly, if you're really my son, then I've spent 6 months screaming at my own child. Making him scrub floors. Treating him like he was nothing. You didn't know, he said quietly. I should have known. A mother should know. How? His voice broke. How could you have known? They told you I was dead. You had no reason to question it. And I look nothing like that baby in the photo. He was right. And he was wrong. Because some part of me had known. Some part of me had recognized him from the first moment and had been terrified by it. That's why I treated him so badly. Not in spite of the connection I felt, but because of it. The letter, I said suddenly. Someone sent me a letter telling me to ask about your birthday, about Boston. Who was it? I don't know. Don't lie. I'm not. He pulled an envelope from his pocket with shaking hands. I got one too. 3 days ago. It just said, tell her the truth. I took it. Same handwriting as mine. No return address. Someone knew. Someone had known all along and was forcing this confrontation. But who? The DNA results would take 72 hours. I know now those were the longest 3 days of my life. Longer than the 6 hours I spent holding a dying baby. Longer than the 2 years after James died when I wandered through this house like a ghost. Because at least in those moments, the pain was clean. Defined. I knew exactly what I'd lost. This was something different. This was hope, and hope is the most dangerous thing in the world. I couldn't look at Ethan. I couldn't not look at him. I moved through those 3 days in a fog, watching him from windows, from doorways, cataloging every feature with obsessive attention. His hands, were they James's hands? Long fingers, white knuckles. His profile, was that my nose? My father's jaw? He moved through the house like a ghost too, both of us pretending the conversation in my study hadn't happened. Both of us terrified by what the results would say. On the first night, I couldn't sleep. At 2 in the morning, I went downstairs and found him at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, staring at nothing. We sat across from each other in silence for a long moment. Did she treat you well? I finally asked. Sarah Morris. He considered the question carefully. She loved me. Whatever she was, whatever she did, she loved me. We were poor, especially after my father left. She worked double shifts to keep us in a decent apartment. She read to me every night until I was 12. She came to every school event, every game, every performance. He wrapped both hands around his mug. When she got sick, I quit school to take care of her. 2 years I watched her disappear. By the end she weighed about 90 pounds. Something twisted in my chest. You quit school. I got my GED online. You were 15. 16 when I quit. 14 when I found out who I might be. He looked up at me. She told me the truth on my 14th birthday. My real birthday, April 14th, said it was her gift to me. The worst gift anyone ever gave me. Did you hate her? I wanted to. He stared at his tea. I tried. But she was my mother, the only one I'd ever known. And she was dying. There wasn't room for hate alongside the grief. I thought about that. If the test comes back positive, then what? He looked at me directly, and again I was struck by his eyes. My eyes. Dark brown with a small ring of gold near the iris. What happens then? Do I suddenly have a family? Do we just, what? Pretend the last 6 months didn't happen? That you don't despise me? I don't despise you. You despise someone. You just called him by my name. The accuracy of that hit me like a physical blow. Because he was right. The rage I'd directed at him, it had never really been about him. It was grief wearing anger's face. 17 years of unprocessed loss that had curdled into something ugly. I was a different person before you died, I said. Before they told me you died. James, your father, he tried to reach me. I wouldn't let him. Couldn't let anyone touch the grief, couldn't let anyone in. When James died, I became something worse. You became someone who controls everything because you couldn't control the things that mattered. I stared at him. You're 17. Pain makes you older. We sat in silence again. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, rain had started. Your father, I began. James Westbrook. He said it flatly. Already knew. He died 2 years ago. Heart attack. He never knew there was a chance you were alive. He spent 17 years grieving too. My voice fractured. He was a good man. A good father who never got to be a father. Something moved across Ethan's face, a grief for someone he'd never known. Tell me about him, he said softly. So I did. In that dark kitchen with rain against the windows, I told my maybe son about his maybe father. How James had been relentlessly cheerful in the face of my relentless coldness. How he'd laughed too loud at bad jokes. How he'd collected vintage records he never listened to. How he'd cried more than me at the hospital, great heaving sobs, while I lay silent and dried and shut down. He sounds like someone I would have liked, Ethan said. He would have loved you, I said, and my voice cracked completely on the last word. That was when I cried. Properly, fully, for the first time in years. Not the tight, controlled tears I'd allow myself occasionally, but real weeping. The kind that takes over your whole body. And Ethan Morris, who might be my son, who I'd treated like a servant for 6 months, reached across the kitchen table and put his hand over mine. Said nothing. Just held on. That was the most human I'd felt in 2 years. The next morning, it all fell apart in a different way. My brother David arrived unannounced. David Hargrove was 3 years older than me, heavy where I was lean, loud where I was quiet, and we'd never been particularly close. He'd been kind after James died, too kind, hovering, always finding reasons to visit, to involve himself in my financial decisions. I'd assumed it was family concern. Now, standing in my foyer with his cashmere coat dripping rain, I wasn't sure. I heard you have a new personal servant, he said, kissing my cheek. Someone said you're getting oddly attached. Wanted to check in. Who told you that? Maria. We're friends, Catherine. You know that. I felt a cold clarity. Maria had called David. Was that her checking in with family, or something else? Come in, I said carefully. He made himself at home the way he always did, moving through rooms, touching things, asking about my investments, my health, my plans for the estate. The estate that, without an heir, would eventually pass to him. What are you doing here, David? I cut through his small talk. I told you. Checking on my sister. He settled into James's chair with practiced ease. There's a rumor that you've become obsessed with one of your staff members. That you're asking peculiar questions about his history. That you've ordered DNA tests. Robert. Robert had told him. Or someone in Robert's office had. My private business, I said. Nothing's private when it affects the family. His voice was pleasant. His eyes weren't. Catherine, I'm worried about you. Grief does strange things. Sometimes it makes us reach for impossible things, hope that isn't really there. Or sometimes impossible things are true. He went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying that boy out there might be my son. Might be James's son. Might be the heir to everything in this house. David's face did something complicated, surprise, calculation, and something beneath both that looked very much like fear. That's not possible, he said softly. The DNA results will tell us. Catherine. He stood up. You were there. You held that baby while he died. This is a grief-induced fantasy. Someone is clearly taking advantage of you. That boy is taking advantage of you, playing on your grief. Who told you to come here? I asked suddenly. Not Maria. You said it yourself. I've only ordered the DNA test in the last 24 hours. Nobody outside this house knows about the birthmark, about the birth certificate, about any of it. So how do you know enough to be this specific? The silence that followed told me everything. David, I said slowly. Did you know? Don't be ridiculous. Did you know my son was alive? Catherine, you need to listen to me very carefully. Get out of my house. Catherine. Get out, David. Get out now, and don't come back until those results arrive. And if they say what I think they're going to say, then you and I are going to have a very, very different conversation. He left. But he paused at the door, and the look he gave me over his shoulder wasn't a brother's concern. It was a warning. The third day, everything collapsed at once. Ethan disappeared. I came down to breakfast and his room was empty. Duffel bag gone. Bible gone. Everything he owned, gone. Maria was white-faced at the kitchen table. He left at 6 this morning, she said. Wouldn't tell me why. Just said it was better this way. Better for who? She slid a piece of paper across the table. A note, in his handwriting. Asterisk Mrs. Westbrook. I came here hoping for something I had no right to want. Whatever the results say, I've caused you enough pain. Some things that are broken can't be fixed, and I don't want to be something else you lose. I'm sorry for everything. Ethan. Asterisk. I read it twice. 3 times. Then I looked at Maria. Where did he go? I don't know. Did someone call him? Did David? No one called him. She hesitated. But someone visited. Last night, very late. I heard voices from his room. A man's voice. I didn't see who it was. David. David had come back and frightened him away. And I knew with absolute certainty why. Because David knew those results were coming back positive. And if Ethan was my son, David lost everything. I grabbed my phone and called Robert. Find him, I said. Find Ethan Morris. Now. Robert called back in 4 hours. Ethan had used cash at a bus station 12 miles away. He'd bought a ticket to nowhere specific, a route that connected to 6 different cities. He was gone, deliberately, carefully, in the way of someone who'd spent years learning how to disappear. I sat in my study with the DNA results sitting unopened on my desk. They'd arrived by courier at 10 that morning. A sealed envelope. The answer to 17 years of grief sitting right there, and the subject of that answer was on a bus somewhere, running away from me. I almost opened them alone. Almost. Instead, I just stared at them. Maria sat across from me. She'd been crying quietly for an hour, which was how I knew she already understood what those results would say. You knew, I said, not looking up. Not knew. Suspected. She twisted her hands in her lap. From the first day. Something about him. The way he looked at your photos. The way he moved through this house, like he was memorizing it. And his eyes, Catherine. He has your eyes exactly. You didn't tell me. I didn't want to hurt you if I was wrong. But you called David. I called David because I was worried about you. Because you were becoming obsessed and I didn't understand why. She pressed her hands flat on the desk. I didn't know about David. I didn't know he had reasons to make that boy go away. I swear that to you. I believed her. Maria had been loyal to me for 15 years, through the worst of my grief, through every ugly version of myself I'd become. She hadn't known she was handing David a weapon. Did David come here last night? I think so. Yes. What did he say to Ethan? I don't know. She shook her head. But whatever it was, it worked. That boy was gone by dawn. I looked at the envelope on my desk. If I open this and it says what I think it says, David will fight it. He'll hire lawyers. He'll claim the results were tampered with, that Ethan is a con artist, that I'm incompetent, grief-stricken, mentally unfit. Probably. He'll be able to stall things for years. He knows every lawyer I know. He's been involved in my finances since James died. He knows everything. So what do you do? I press my fingers to the envelope. I think David has been waiting for this moment for a long time. Not just the last few days. Longer. I think he's known for a while that Ethan was alive, and he's been protecting his position as my heir. How would David know Ethan was alive? I thought about it. Turned it over. And then, like a key finding a lock, it clicked. He knew Sarah Morris, I said slowly. Or someone in that hospital did. Someone with a connection to my family. Someone who might have arranged for a grieving nurse to get what she wanted in exchange for, what? A favor? Money. Insurance. Maria stared at me. You think David arranged it? The switch? David was 24 when I had that baby. He already knew he was going to inherit our parents' money, but he also knew that James and I were wealthy, that if we had children, eventually that wealth would skip him entirely in family decisions. I stood up. Or maybe he just found out later, found out that my baby was alive somewhere, and chose to keep it quiet. Chose to let me keep grieving so he could stay close to everything I own. Either way, David's hands were dirty. I was certain of it. I need proof, I said. I need more than a DNA test. I need to know exactly what David knew and when he knew it. How? I picked up my phone and made a call I'd been avoiding for 2 days. It rang 3 times. Catherine. My brother's voice, cautious. David. I need to see you. Come to dinner tonight. A pause. Is this about the boy? It's about family, I said. Come at 7. I hung up. What are you planning? Maria asked. First, I'm going to open this envelope. I picked it up, slid my finger under the seal. Removed the single page inside. My eyes found a key line immediately. Probability of biological relationship, 99.97%. My son. He was my son, and he was on a bus somewhere, running away from the only family he had left. I let myself feel it for exactly 60 seconds. The confirmation. The grief for lost years. The desperate, aching love for a child I'd never gotten to raise. The fury at everyone who'd stolen that from both of us. 60 seconds, And then I put it down and picked up my phone again. Robert. I need you to do something for me that goes beyond your usual scope. And I need you to trust me completely. Tell me. I need everything you can find on my brother David Hargrove. Financial records, communications, any connection to Boston General Hospital, any connection to Sarah Morris. Everything going back 17 years. Catherine, David uses some of the same financial institutions you do. If he finds out he won't find out. Not until tonight. I look at the DNA results on my desk. And Robert. Find Ethan. Wherever that bus takes him, find him. I don't care what it costs. Just find my son. The word felt like breaking a bone back into place. Painful and necessary and right. Your son? Robert said quietly. My son. I spent the afternoon preparing for 2 battles simultaneously. The first battle was for the truth. I called a contact I had at the Boston Globe, a journalist named Patricia Owens who'd written about hospital scandals before. I didn't give her details. Just told her to be available this evening and that if what I suspected proved true, she'd have the biggest story of her career. The second battle was for Ethan. Because I understood something now that I hadn't understood before. Finding him wasn't enough. Showing him the DNA results wasn't enough. I could prove he was my son, but I couldn't prove I deserve him. I thought about everything he'd said in that dark kitchen. About Sarah Morris reading to him every night. About quitting school to take care of her. About arriving at my door with nothing and being handed mobs and criticism instead of the mother he'd come looking for. He hadn't come here for money. He'd come here for connection. For the possibility of belonging somewhere, to someone. And I'd given him 6 months of contempt. The strength I found that afternoon wasn't the hard, brittle control I'd been mistaking for strength for years. It was something softer and more terrifying. It was the decision to be wrong in public, to be broken in front of people, to choose my son over my pride. Whatever David had planned for tonight, whatever lawyers and counterarguments and character assassination he had prepared, none of it would work if I walked into that room without anything to defend. I went to Ethan's empty room and sat on his narrow bed. On the wall above it, so small I'd missed it the first time I searched the room, he'd scratched something into the plaster. Just 4 words. Someone was here once. I pressed my hand over those words, and I made him a promise. David arrived at 7 exactly, which told me he'd been waiting nearby. He came in confident, jacket pressed, expression controlled. A man who believed he was walking into a situation he'd already managed. He hadn't counted on Robert. Or Patricia Owens. Or the fact that I'd spent 17 years becoming someone impossible to surprise, and I'd finally decided to use that. They were already seated in my study when Maria showed David in. He stopped at the doorway, taking in the scene, Robert at my left, Patricia at the far end with a recorder on the table, and me behind James's desk with the DNA results and a second file folder in front of me. What is this? His voice was pleasant, but his eyes had gone flat and careful. Sit down, David. I don't think I want to. Sit down. Something in my voice was different and he heard it. He said. You know Patricia Owens, I said. She covers institutional accountability for the Globe. I'm familiar with her work. He glanced at Patricia, who smiled neutrally and said nothing. Catherine, whatever you think you're doing. I'm going to tell you what I know, I said. And then you're going to tell me the rest. And then we're going to decide, together, how this ends. There's nothing to. My son is alive. I placed the DNA results on the desk facing him. He looked at them without touching them. Ethan Morris is my biological child. The child I was told died 6 hours after birth at Boston General Hospital 17 years ago. David said nothing. Sarah Morris was a nurse at that hospital. She took my son and raised him as her own. She died 2 years ago, and Ethan ended up here because Sarah sent him here. Because she wrote this address in her Bible. I opened the second folder. But Sarah didn't act alone. A nurse on minimum wage couldn't have managed all of this without help. The paperwork, the falsified records, the death certificate for a baby who didn't die. Someone helped her. Someone who had resources and motivation and access. You're speculating? Robert. I nodded. Robert laid 3 documents on the desk, turned them toward David. Wire transfers. 17 years ago, starting 1 month after your nephew was born. Regular payments from an offshore account into a domestic account registered to Sarah Morris. Small amounts, carefully spaced so they wouldn't trigger any reporting thresholds. But consistent. Every 3 months for 14 years, until Sarah became ill. David looked at the documents without expression. The offshore account, Robert continued, is held through 3 shell companies. It took us most of the day to trace it. The beneficial owner is a trust established in 1987. He paused. The Hargrove Family Trust. My parents' trust, I said quietly. Which you've administered since Dad died. Those documents could belong to anyone, David said. A trust that size has dozens of subsidiary accounts. I can't be held responsible for every. There's more, Robert said. He laid down a second set of papers. Call logs. Years of them. Sarah Morris's phone records, obtained through her estate, Robert said. She made calls to a number registered to a consulting firm called DHG Advisors. Twice a year, every year, for 14 years. DHG Advisors. He looked at David. David Hargrove Group. Your private consulting firm, David. The one you've never publicly connected to your name. The room was completely silent. David's jaw was tight, but he still hadn't broken. He was calculating. I could see him running contingencies, looking for exits. You were 24, I said. When I had that baby, you were 24 and already working for Dad's company, already positioned to eventually inherit. But then I married James, wealthy, successful James Westbrook, and suddenly the Westbrook money was part of the family picture too. If James and I had children, those children would inherit Westbrook money and eventually influence Hargrove decisions too. More than that, James and I might have helped me claim a larger share of family assets. This is absurd. Did you approach Sarah Morris? Or did she approach you? I watched his face. I think she approached you. I think she'd already decided what she wanted to do, but she needed help with the paperwork, the records. She needed someone with money and connections. And you saw an opportunity. Something shifted in his face. Almost imperceptible. But I knew my brother. Or maybe, I continued softly, you found out years later that my son was alive. Maybe you didn't arrange it initially, but you discovered it and chose silence over truth. Chose your inheritance over your sister's child. Either way, Patricia Owens said, speaking for the first time, the financial records establish a clear connection between Mr. Hargrove and the woman who abducted Catherine Westbrook's son. Regardless of when or how his involvement began, he was funding the concealment of a stolen child. David turned to look at her with genuine venom. That recorder is illegal in this state without. Massachusetts is a two-party consent state, Patricia said pleasantly. You gave consent when you sat down at this table after I identified myself and you chose to stay. She smiled. I'm a thorough professional, Mr. Hargrove. He stood up. I'm leaving. And I'm calling my lawyers tonight, Catherine. Don't think for a single moment that a DNA test and some creative accounting is going to. David. My voice stopped him at the door. I found something else. He turned slowly. I reached into the folder and pulled out the last document. A storage unit. Registered in your name in Brookline. Robert found the registration this afternoon. I looked at my brother steadily. We haven't opened it yet. But I think we both know what's in there. He'd kept records. I was certain of it. Because men like David always kept records, insurance, leverage, the habit of people who build their security on other people's secrets. His face finally cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. You don't want to do this, he said quietly. You don't want this to become public. The story of your son being stolen, the sympathy, yes, but also the scrutiny. Questions about your family, about why no one noticed for 17 years, about. I've spent 17 years being afraid of scrutiny, I said. Of grief. Of hope. Of loving anything enough to lose it. I stood up. I'm done being afraid. I picked up my phone and called Robert's associate waiting outside the storage facility in Brookline. Open it, I said. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with photos. Files, meticulously organized. Hospital records from Boston General, originals, stamped and dated. Communications between David and Sarah Morris going back to the beginning. A private investigator's reports tracking Ethan's life year by year, his schools, his addresses, his mother's illness, his eventual arrival at my door. David had known where Ethan was for at least 8 years. He'd watched my son grow up through a private investigator's reports and done nothing. Said nothing. I handed my phone to Patricia without looking at David. She scrolled through the photos, her expression carefully professional but her eyes wide. David, I said. I'm giving you one opportunity. You call your lawyers tonight, you fight this, you put our family through years of litigation and public exposure, and I will burn everything to the ground. Every shell company, every trust account, every wire transfer goes to the Attorney General's office tonight. Catherine. Or you sign over control of the Hargrove Trust to an independent administrator tonight. You step back from every account that touches my money or my son's potential inheritance. You cooperate fully with whatever investigation follows. And I don't call the Attorney General until morning, which gives you time to get ahead of it. You're asking me to destroy myself. I'm asking you to stop destroying my family. We stared at each other across 17 years of lies. And then my phone rang. Robert's name on the screen. I answered. We found him, Robert said. He's at a bus depot in Providence. Catherine, he hasn't gotten on another bus. He's just sitting there. My throat closed. Tell him, my voice broke. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tried again. Tell him I'm coming. Tell him the results came back. Tell him I know who he is and I'm coming to get my son. Robert was quiet for a moment. Tell him yourself, he said gently. I'll put him on. Rustling. A pause. Then a voice, quiet, careful, terrified. Mrs. Westbrook. Ethan. I couldn't say anything else for a moment. The room was completely silent. David stood frozen at the door. Maria had appeared from somewhere and was crying openly. Patricia Owens was looking at her recorder like she'd forgotten it existed. Ethan, I said again. I opened the results. Silence on the line. I should have opened them differently. I should have found you first. I should have done so many things differently. My voice was wrecked and I didn't care. But you need to know something. You need to know that however wrong I got everything, whatever that 6 months looked like, some part of me knew. From the first moment you stood in my study. I knew and I was terrified, and I took it out on you, and there is no excuse for that. The results, he said. His voice barely above a whisper. What did they say? They said you're mine. I pressed my free hand flat on James's desk to keep standing. They said you've been mine for 17 years, and I'm so sorry it took me this long to find you. The sound that came through the phone then was something I will carry for the rest of my life. Not dramatic sobbing. Just a single, fractured exhale, like someone who had been holding their breath for a very long time finally letting it go. Don't move, I said. I'm coming. I'll be there in an hour. Don't move. Okay, he said. Just that. Okay. I hung up. Looked at David, who was still standing at the door with the expression of a man watching his life collapse around him. Make your call, I said. I have somewhere to be. I drove to Providence myself. No driver, no Maria, no Robert. Just me and the highway and 17 years of absence pressing on my chest. He was exactly where Robert said, sitting on a wooden bench inside the bus depot, duffel bag between his feet, hands clasped. Looking exactly like the boy who'd appeared at my service entrance 6 months ago, exhausted and hungry and braced for rejection. He saw me come through the doors. Stood up slowly. I crossed the depot floor and did something I hadn't done in 17 years. I put my arms around my son. He went rigid for exactly 3 seconds, the automatic stiffness of someone who'd learned not to expect tenderness. And then he crumbled. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just completely. His head dropped to my shoulder, his hands gripped the back of my coat, and he wept the way only someone who has been strong for too long can weep. I held on. I've got you, I said into his hair. I've got you. You're not going anywhere. We stood there in the middle of a bus depot in Providence while strangers walked around us and the announcement board clicked through departures. I held my son for the first time in 17 years and felt 17 years of ice finally start to melt. 3 months have passed since that night in Providence. I'm sitting in the kitchen right now, the same kitchen where Ethan and I sat across from each other in the dark, 2 broken people, neither of us fully understanding why. Except now it's morning, and the kitchen smells like coffee and burnt toast because my son cannot figure out the toaster setting no matter how many times I explain it, and I have never been less annoyed by anything in my entire life. He's standing at the counter right now, scraping blackened bread over the sink with the same focused expression he used to wear when he was scrubbing my floors. Some habits of concentration are permanent, I've learned. He's catastrophically bad at cooking. He's extraordinary at everything else. You did it again, I tell him. The dial is misleading, he says seriously, without turning around. The dial has numbers on it. The numbers are suggestions. I laugh. Genuinely, fully, the way I'd forgotten I could. He turns around when he hears it, and there's a small smile on his face, still cautious, still learning that happiness in this house isn't something that gets taken away. We're both learning that. David didn't fight it. I'm still not entirely sure whether that was wisdom or exhaustion or the particular cowardice of a man who'd spent 17 years maintaining a lie and finally ran out of the energy required for it. He signed the trust documents that same night, handed over administrative control, and by morning had retained a criminal attorney. The investigation is ongoing. The district attorney's office has the storage unit files, the wire transfer records, the phone logs. David's legal team is negotiating, which is lawyer language, for he knows exactly how guilty he is and he's trying to control the damage. Sarah Morris is dead and beyond the reach of any court, which is something I have complicated feelings about. She loved Ethan. She raised him with genuine devotion. She also stole him from me and let me grieve for 17 years and made choices that affected 2 families permanently. I can hold all of that at once now, the rawness of what she did and the humanity of who she was. It's uncomfortable. Most true things are. What I've learned about Ethan in 3 months. He reads constantly, history, science, anything he can get his hands on, catching up on the education he interrupted to care for Sarah. We've hired a tutor, an excellent one, and Ethan absorbs information the way dry ground absorbs rain. His GED scores were already high. His potential is staggering. He makes friends carefully and keeps them fiercely. Maria, who cried for 3 days straight when the truth came out, has become something between a grandmother and a co-conspirator. He helps her with her crossword every morning without being asked. He's still quiet. Still watches rooms before he enters them. Still flinches occasionally at sharp voices. That will take longer to heal, and I know I'm part of why it will take longer, and I carry that. He is learning, slowly, to let himself want things. Last week he told me he wants to study medicine. He said it quietly, like he expected me to question it, to make him justify the ambition. Okay, I said. So that's what we work toward. He blinked. Just like that. Just like that. He was quiet for a moment. Why medicine? Because I spent 2 years watching someone disappear from the inside out, he said. And nobody could stop it. I want to be someone who can stop it. I thought about James, who would have made exactly the same choice for exactly the same reason if he'd had this conversation. Who would have put his hand on Ethan's shoulder and said something embarrassingly enthusiastic and probably cried. Your father would have said that was the right answer, I told him. He smiled. Full and real and devastating, because it was James's smile completely. How did I not see that from the first day? How does a person look at James Westbrook's smile on a stranger's face and not know? Because grief blinds you. Because you stop looking for miracles when you've stopped believing in them. The legal process of formally establishing Ethan's identity has been extraordinary in its complexity and its absurdity. There are documents to file, records to correct, a death certificate to have expunged for a child who is very much alive and burning toast in my kitchen. His name is legally still Ethan Morris for now. We've talked about Westbrook. It's your choice, I told him. Completely your choice. Can I think about it? You can think about it for as long as you want. He thought about it for 2 weeks. Then one morning he came down for breakfast and said, I think I want to keep Morris too. Ethan Morris Westbrook. Is that too much? It's exactly right, I said. And meant it completely, because Sarah Morris, for all she'd done, had been his mother for 17 years and that was real even when it was wrong. He nodded. Then he ruined the toast again. The hardest part is the ordinary moments. I expected the revelations to be the hardest, the DNA results, the confrontation with David, the night in Providence. Those were hard, yes, but they were also clean. Dramatic. You knew how to feel. The ordinary moments are harder. Sitting across from him at dinner and realizing I don't know his favorite food. Finding out he's afraid of thunderstorms, Not in a significant way, just in the way of someone who spent years in thin-walled apartments where thunder was genuinely alarming. Learning that he hums when he's concentrating, tuneless, unconscious humming, and recognizing with a jolt that I do the same thing. Learning him. Being learned by him. He asked me once, about 2 months in, what were you like? Before everything went wrong. I had to think. I was warmer, I said finally. Impatient, but warm. I laugh more. James used to say I had a laugh that cleared rooms, not because it was unpleasant, but because it was sudden. Startling. I'd like to have heard that. You do hear it, I said. Occasionally, when you destroy the toast. He laughed at that. And I realized, his laugh was startling too. Genetics are a strange and wonderful thing. There's something I need to tell you, and I've been working up to it through this whole story, and here it is. I was not a good person for a long time. Not just to Ethan, though I was particularly not good to him, and that will sit on my conscience permanently. I was brittle and controlling, and I mistook cruelty for strength and isolation for protection. Grief doesn't excuse that. Understanding why I became that person doesn't make the years I spent being her retroactively acceptable. But here is what I've learned, at 52 years old, in a kitchen that smells like burnt toast. You can change. Not completely. Not overnight. Not without cost. But you can choose, every morning, to be less close than you were the day before. To let one more person pass the wall you built. To stop punishing the people in front of you for the losses behind you. Ethan didn't come to my door as a lesson for me. He came because he was desperate and alone, and his dying mother had pointed him toward the possibility of belonging somewhere. He didn't owe me transformation. He didn't owe me redemption. He just owed me burnt toast, apparently. An unlimited, perpetual supply of it. But in allowing him in being forced by circumstance and DNA and anonymous letters and my own recognition of his eyes to finally stop closing everything out, I found something I'd lost longer ago than he'd been missing. I found out I was still someone who could love things. That's not a small discovery at 52. We still don't know who sent the letters. Robert hasn't been able to trace them. The handwriting matches no one we know. The paper is generic, untraceable. Whoever it was knew enough about both of us, Ethan's birthday, my history, the connection to Boston, to send us both in the right direction at the right time. My instinct, the one I can't prove and can't shake, is that it was someone at Boston General Hospital. Someone who was there 17 years ago and has been carrying the knowledge since. Someone whose conscience finally broke. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe what matters is that it worked. But sometimes I think about that person, whoever they are, sitting somewhere with 17 years of silence finally discharged, and I wish I could find them. Wish I could tell them that the domino they tipped eventually reached us. That both broken things they set in motion, my grief and Ethan's rootlessness, have found each other and are slowly, imperfectly, stubbornly becoming whole. If you're out there, whoever you are, thank you. This morning, before the toast disaster, I was standing at the window with my coffee when Ethan came downstairs. He didn't know I was there yet. He moved through the kitchen the way he always does, quietly, efficiently, years of invisibility worn into his body like a groove. Then he stopped at the counter, looked out the window at the garden, and his shoulders dropped. Just slightly. The particular relaxation of someone who has stopped waiting to be asked to leave. He felt safe. That simple thing. That tiny physical shift. It cracked me open completely and I had to look away and compose myself, and then he saw me and said good morning in that careful voice that is slowly, incrementally becoming less careful, and then he destroyed the toast. And I laughed. The startling kind, the room-clearing kind, the kind James always said was too much and not enough all at once. Ethan looked at me with wide eyes. "That's it," he said. "That's the laugh you told me about." "Too much?" I asked. He grinned. James's grin. "Not even close to enough. My name is Catherine Westbrook. 6 months ago, I was a woman made entirely of walls, treating a teenage boy like he was less than nothing because I was afraid of what he made me feel. 3 months ago, I held my son in a bus depot in Providence and began the slow, necessary work of becoming someone who deserved him. I'm not there yet. I may never fully get there. But I'm working on it every day, in a kitchen that smells like burnt toast, beside a boy who hums when he concentrates and wants to be a doctor and has his father's smile and my laugh, and 17 years of missing time that we are filling in, day by day, one ordinary moment after another. Some things that are broken can be fixed." He wrote that they couldn't, in a note he left on a bed in an empty room. He was wrong. I am so grateful he was wrong. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt the particular terror of hoping for something you'd given up on, or the particular shame of realizing you became someone you never intended to be, then you already understand why I had to tell it. We are all capable of becoming our worst selves in the presence of enough pain. And we are all capable, given enough grace and enough burnt toast, of finding our way back. Stay with me. Because next time, I want to tell you about the woman who spent 20 years believing she destroyed her sister's life, only to discover her sister had been protecting her the whole time. Some stories of betrayal are not what they appear. And neither are some stories of guilt. I'll see you then.